Welcome to CEU's webinar series on undergraduate education. Just so you know, we are recording this session and we will make it available on the website later. So we're muting all the guests to start with. Also, please feel free to keep your video off if you don't want to have it on the recording. And we invite you to send us questions in the chat box and we'll answer them at the end of the discussion. Also, feel free, if you do want to, at the end of the discussion, when we have our Q&A, you can also feel free to turn your video on and actually ask us questions that way as well. But if you have questions that come up while we're talking and during our little presentation, feel free to type them in the chat box and we'll address them at the very, very end. So a very quick introduction. I'm Tanya Manners. I'm the CEU Undergraduate Studies Project Manager. And today's webinar is dedicated to the BA in Culture, Politics, and Society. And I'm going to be having a discussion with three people. We have Professor Dorit Geva, and also two students. We have Fikar and Rahel. So I'd like to just start with a very, very quick introduction. Dorit, can you just have a brief introduction of yourself, and then we'll follow with Fikar and Rahel, and then we'll move on to our actual discussion and questions. So Dorit first, please.
Sure. So as Tanya mentioned, my name is Dorit Geva. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. Thank you for taking the time to view it. I currently wear three hats at CEU. I am the Dean of Undergraduate Studies, so that means that I oversee all the BA programs, all three BA programs, CPS, PPE, and QSS. I am also the program head for our BA in CPS, Culture, Politics, and Society. And as Fikar and Rahel know, I'm also professor in CPS and I teach in the program. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Fikar, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Hi, my name is Ranu Sjahrazad. I am a first-year student at CPS here at Central European University, and I'm from Jakarta, Indonesia.
Great, thanks. And Rahel?
Hi, sorry for my camera. I just don't have a computer right now, so I just have to use the phone. I'm Rahel. I come from Italy, and yeah, I'm CPS student too since this year.
Great, thank you very much. So, and also, sorry, Lydia, can you please give an introduction of yourself? Sorry about that. You were further on my screen, so.
No worries. My name is Lydia. I'm the program coordinator for the CPS program. So I'm here to help students with anything academics related, any questions or issues that they're facing.
Great, thank you. So here's our agenda. The very first thing we'll be starting with is just in general, the CEU BA education. And given that this is a very student-centered university, we would actually love to hear from our students first. So my very first question for both Fikar and Rahel is, can you let us know why you chose CEU? Because I think this will help people understand why CEU is special and why it's special to get a BA degree here. Who'd like to start?
I can begin.
Okay, Fikar, go for it, thanks.
Well, I think my two main reasons as to why I chose CEU is my university to take my bachelor's degree in. Is, first of all, it's a very international university. I think that there are, in my class of like 30, 40 people, there are people from 20, 30 different countries. I think so far a lot of the subjects that we study deal with a lot of intercultural matters. In environmental complexities, we're learning about different attitudes towards the environment, as an example. I also think sorry, my two other reasons. I love the program. CPS, so far, I am absolutely having a blast. And third reason would be, oh gosh, I forgot. The small class sizes. Yes, that's also very important for me.
Great, thanks. Rahel, do you have anything that you want to add? Why did you choose CEU?
Yeah, I have to agree with Fikar. The small class sizes are really, really great because you really get the opportunity to talk about the topics in class, and you're not an anonymous student, one of 100, but your teachers know you, and that's kind of very a family-like school, and I like that. It's like you really feel a community when you go to CEU. And another thing is also that we study in English, and that's really great, especially in the field of intercultural studies, because in your work life, you're always going to have to talk in English. So you really get used to it and you have your training in English. That's good.
That's great, thanks. And Fikar, you were mentioning all the different nationalities represented. Can you guys give some examples of where your fellow students are from? I know there are a lot of countries out there. Can you name some of the nationalities? And can you also just tell us a little bit about your classmates? You know, what have been some of the most interesting things you've learned from some of your classmates? What sort of interests do they have, backgrounds, hobbies, and so on?
I live in the dorm, so I kind of have a really close connection to all the other classmates that live in the dorms too. And there's like a lot of guys from everywhere, like Hungary, Poland, Georgia. My roommate is from Georgia. And the thing that I like the most is like I get updates on politics from everywhere of the world. And that's really kind of funny because like I knew about the let's say demonstrations in Georgia before they even started, because I just knew from the insides, and that's really cool. So you really get to know these cultures and these nations and what's happening there from the first hand, and so you really feel interconnected.
Great, thank you. Okay, Dorit, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about the vision for the future with the BAs? So a BA education at CEU, what's happening in the future with it?
Sure. But if I can I don't know if Fikar also wanted to say anything about the some of the encounters with students, or if you'd rather pass on that question. I just didn't want you to feel skipped.
Sorry about that, Fikar. Yes, please do add anything you'd like.
Thank you. An important thing that I should mention just now is I'm actually learning at CEU completely remotely. I have some difficulties obtaining my Austrian visa. So right now I'm learning completely through online from my house here in Jakarta. I've actually developed I've been able to develop a friend group with other students who are also similarly stuck in their home countries. In that group, we have somebody from Nepal, from India, from Guatemala, from Mexico, and the United States. And I know that we have, in my class alone, we have Canadians, we have other Germans, we have Austrians, we have Russians. It's all very, very cool.
Great, thank you so much. Dorit, so can you tell us a little bit more about the future of BA education at CEU?
Well, so we are continuing, of course, with our existing BA programs, which have already started this past September 2020. So that's the BA in Culture, Politics, and Society, and the second BA, which is in Philosophy, Politics, and Economics. But the other exciting news is that we have undergone accreditation for a third BA, which will be in Quantitative Social Science, or what we call QSS for short. And we'll be launching that in September 2021. So we're now in the process of making that happen and recruiting our first class for that. So the BA so the undergraduate body will grow with each year, because each year we'll recruit a new cohort, and furthermore, not just recruiting for 2 BAs, but now recruiting for 3 BA programs.
Great, thanks. One more quick question for what's happening right now. I do really hope this is not an issue in 21, 22, but can you all tell me a little bit about the student experience in COVID times? I mean, I think especially Fikar could probably answer this question quite well, seeing he's been doing all his classes online. What's it been like studying online, and how do you think that's been going?
Well, personally, I am coping with it rather well. Before Vienna went on lockdown, CEU had I think you called it synchronous blended teaching, whereby there were cameras set up throughout the class, and most of the class, anybody who could attend there, was sitting in class, and the professor is teaching in person. And I found that to be like genuinely so effective at teaching me. It felt like I was just actually there. Like a lot of, personally, I think when I'm in class, when I'm being taught things, having the teacher be able to teach as if they were in front of a real classroom, and because they are, it gets rid of that extra barrier. But even then, since Vienna went on lockdown a couple of weeks ago and we're learning online completely, it's all very accommodating. My teachers are able to use the platforms to, I suppose, give out assignments and grade us very well. There haven't been any huge, technical issues so far. I'm still able to talk and socialize with my classmates as much as I can through online means. It's like I'm almost there.
That's great. And Rahel, do you have anything to say from the experience of being actually in Vienna during these times, how it's been for you?
Yeah, for sure. For me, it is better to really be in the class and to actually see your classmates because they all live together with you in the dorms. And that's really even more than online. But I have to say, the online schooling works really, really well. The Zoom meeting and everything, it's just it's working. I feel like the teachers all know how to handle these programs, and that's the most important thing. The only thing that was kind of sad this year is that it was not that easy to get to know the other people of my class because we got to know each other. We started doing things together, but then we always had to watch out for the safety reasons. Then some part of, I think it was in October, we actually all had to stay in quarantine because there was a case, but then it was okay again. And now that classes switched online, most of the people went home. And now the community is kind of lost again, but I mean, it is okay. We cope with it, and we will have 3 more years to do that. So it is okay.
Great, thank you. And Dorit, do you have anything to add about learning and teaching in COVID times?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think as both Fikar and Rahel have said very eloquently, there are real challenges that we can't pretend don't exist, but we're doing what we can to still to deliver on the education, the high quality education that we have committed to deliver on. We spent a good deal of the spring and summer preparing for all kinds of eventualities. And because we're a small university, it's something that we can do with relative swiftness. And our commitment is to teach in person to the extent that we can according to Austrian regulations. There's no question that that's our preference. And the rector of the university has clearly signaled this in recent days, even to the entire CEU community.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to the main topic of this webinar, which is the BA in Culture, Politics, and Society. So I think it's best that Dorit starts us off as the head of CPS to tell us a little bit about CPS and its key characteristics.
Sure. Well, CPS, whose full name is Culture, Politics, and Society, is a liberal arts BA. And what that means, I think, for an American audience is obvious and is perhaps less apparent for anybody who's watching this from outside of the US. It's a not uncommon undergraduate type of program in the United States, but which we've developed here with a bit of a European flair. And the idea is to give a very broad education where students also have a good deal of choice. And within those choices, eventually choose a major and then complete a major thesis project on the basis of it. So I think one of its great merits is that it gives both a very broad education, but also in the end, a specialized education, but produces, well, and in the process, I think produces graduates who have a very broad view of the world, which I think from experience really informs them for life. Because no matter what, once you are the graduate of a liberal arts program, you will never read the newspaper, for example, in the same way, or have a political debate at a family dinner, for example, in the same way, or have an exchange with your colleagues at work in the same way, precisely because of the breadth of this kind of education.
And can you tell us a little bit about the structure of the program and how it works?
Sure. There are certain features that are, let's say, classic features of a liberal arts education. So the idea that you start with a very broad foundation. The first foundational year has actually no electives, so it's an entirely mandatory curriculum where we give a really broad basis in a number of disciplines. It also, I think, has a very nice effect of community building amongst the students who all go through the same experience together, and then increasingly becomes specialized over time from the second year, and then especially students choose a major which they start really specializing in their third year. And then a capstone project, which is the graduating capstone project, which is a quite significant independent project that students complete for their fourth year, because this is for the 4-year US accreditation. This is a 4-year program. I should add also that in fact the BA, if one completes the full 4-year program, is accredited both in Austria and in the United States. So I think that's really a distinct benefit of this program. I think also what is not typical of this version of the liberal arts curriculum that we developed is that we incorporated also 2 mandatory modules that students continue to take between years 1 and 3, which focuses on expanding the definition of knowledge to also incorporate how to critically assess media and information, but also produce it. So it's a really, it's also with the idea of emerging from the program with a very concrete set of transferable skills, which in this day and age are helpful not only to be, for example, a critical reader of the daily newspaper, but to also be able to, for example, develop a website or develop even certain basic aspects of a social media campaign for any given job. So I think that's the unique twist that we give to the liberal arts, which is that we expand the idea that that to be a well-informed citizen is not just to have read some of the great classics, but is also to be somebody who can engage with the critical interpretation and also the production of information in this day and age. And then that is really supposed to be actualized in the capstone project, which is not just a proof that you have a specialization in a specific discipline, but the capstone project doesn't have to be a traditional written thesis. It can be a project which really draws from these skills that students are trained in during their first 3 years. So it can be, for example, a documentary film. It can be a big data analytics project. It can be a podcast project. There are different media that people can use to produce the capstone project. And I should also say that in the third year, students have a choice of taking either 1 term abroad or 2 terms abroad. It's not mandatory, but it's a choice that students have. So all of this adds up to students having, I think, a lot of career options that are open to them. It can be business, not-for-profit organizations, cultural industries, creative industries, media, and if one chooses to continue also with further studies in an MA program, that is certainly a door that's open for CPS graduates.
Great. Thank you for that. Can you also elaborate on the experiential learning modules that students take? What do those mean in practice?
Yes, okay. So those are modules. So each academic year in the first 3 years In the first 3 years, each academic year is divided into 3 terms. There's the fall term and the winter term, but then we also have the spring term. And the spring terms have been designed in such a way that they're not sort of conventional classroom terms. Sorry, I'm losing my voice from a day of meetings. So let me just get a sip of water. In the first term, we have courses that are supposed to be immersive courses in the city, where basically through a series of very carefully structured site visits, students connect knowledge that they accumulated in topics that were studied throughout the year into the environs of understanding the context of the city of Vienna and Austria, and even the region more broadly. The second year, I think, is a very important experiential term in CPS, because that's a term when students either do an internship, or they can do a civic engagement project, or they can participate in a research project at the CEU. And the idea there is also that can already start enabling students to figure out some of their own interests, and to start having a vision as to how the studies might connect to their life and ambitions beyond their time at CEU. And in the third year, I should say that, just to finish it, is also the development of a paper project. And then in the fourth year, it's the completion of the major capstone project that takes place in the spring.
Great. And speaking of life after CEU, can you tell us a little bit about how CEU prepares students for work, and also maybe some examples of potential career paths after taking the BA in CPS?
Yeah. So again, I think in addition to just the general sophistication of somebody who's emerged, who is a graduate of a very broad program, but which also offers specialization. And I think in and of itself is actually something which is really important to succeed in any career choice, because you're given the skills of being articulate, of being able to argue your position, of being able to usher in the convincing facts that one needs to usher in order to make a convincing case to your boss or your team or a client or a public. These are all things that we give, but I think also the modules that I had mentioned earlier, which are both about interpreting different types of information, different types of knowledge, and then furthermore, learning how to produce everything. A range of skills, like examples that I cited a little bit earlier, like podcasting, documentary filmmaking, some basic skills in Python programming, for example, which we're about to start in the winter term of the first year. Some skills in statistical analysis. These are all, I think, highly transferable skills for the contemporary job market. So you can imagine, for example, somebody who works in an NGO and of any kind, let's say, somebody who's working on an NGO that's focusing on improving recycling in a city. You have both the knowledge from the environment courses that are integrated into the BA, but also the ability to produce reports, to assess information, whether it's good quality data, to do an analysis, to write it up as a report, to make a presentation using the oral skills that are developed, and also the visual skills that are developed. So, just off the top of my head, that's one very clear example, but I can imagine that kind of scenario across many, many sectors, whether it's the nonprofit sector or the private sector.
Great, thank you. Now, obviously, CPS is one of our 3 BA programs. Can you tell us a little bit about how can a prospective student know which program is the best fit for them from these 3?
Well, that's a very tough, that's a tough question. I mean, it sounds like Rahel and Fikar feel that it was a pretty good match for them, at least so far. And this is, of course, a highly individual decision to be made. One key difference is the type of major that people think they might be interested in. CPS has a very nice advantage of providing many options of different directions of different majors that one can end up specializing in. But of course, I mean, at the level of when I wear my dean hat, I think very highly of each program. So of course, if one is interested in either philosophy, politics, or economics, that's a good direction. And then if one wants to develop computational data skills, then the QSS one is a good choice. But you can imagine, for example, a discipline like political science, I think, is one that one could major in any one of those. You can major in political science either in CPS or through PPE or through QSS. But what's important to understand is that the skills that are developed in each program are different. So in CPS, there's more the media skills that are developed. In PPE, it's a little bit more quantitative skills, but certainly analytical thinking skills, because I think they're also having the background in philosophy, and logical argumentation is a clear skill. And then QSS, the distinct skill is computational data analysis. So, and then also in each of these programs, the disciplines feed into each other. So if you, again, say that you're interested in politics, but in the end, after 4 years, your view of politics will look quite different if you've had also, let's say through CPS, you've studied also a lot of history and gender studies, versus in PPE, you'll have studied a lot of economics and philosophy, versus in QSS, where you'll have studied a lot of computational data analysis and network science. So even though, on paper, you can say that you specialize in politics, you're going to have a quite different view of what you mean by politics and what you think is important in politics, and also the skill set that you would acquire in any one of those programs.
Great. I would love to hear from both Fikar and Rahel how you chose CPS. So what made CPS the right choice for you? Fikar, do you want to go first? Why did you choose CPS?
When I first chose it, I only had those two options between CPS and PPE. And I was actually originally thinking of taking PPE because that's what I had. I was familiar with the type of program from different universities, like in the University of Toronto. And it was the case that I just looked through the modules and I realized that I'm a social studies humanities kid. And it's very much the case, but I also like to do art on the side. I like to do writing. I like to make things. And as Dorit said, there are several parts later on during my education here where I will be able to meaningfully express myself in that way while also still learning at core what the type of subjects that I enjoy. So yeah, that's actually my main reason.
Great, thank you. And Rahel, why did you choose CPS?
For me, actually, it was not very difficult to make the decision because economy. I'm just like not really, I shouldn't be maybe, but I'm not really interested in learning economy. So I I was sad about philosophy, but actually we have a philosophy course right now. So it turned out perfectly for me. And I'm not sure if I'm right, but I have the impression that like CPS it's 3 different points of view on the same argument, let's say human society or whatever. And politics, economy, philosophy, politics, economy is kind of more 3 separate fields that you also can connect, but they're more separate. And I like this idea of having this circle, this 3 points that really you always talk about the same things in class and you always can interconnect. And I really like that thing about CPS.
Great, thank you so much.
If I can just, because actually I think Rahel in a way reminded me part of the original thinking of the conceptualization of CPS, which I was involved with a whole team of people that we worked very closely together, which was the idea is that that universities divide the world into disciplines as if disciplines are a natural fact, but actually we experience the world. We don't experience the world in that way, and the world is not, in fact, naturally constructed that way. And so the challenge that we set up for ourselves was exactly along the lines of what Rahel had suggested, which is to introduce a set of topics and issues that especially in the first year aren't looked at from any single angle, but to establish the sensibility that they can be looked at from many different angles. And then students, of course, can end up choosing which are those angles that they find the most interesting, that they're most moved by or most passionate about, but that we don't start right from the beginning with an artificial differentiation between the disciplines. But that's not, again, I want to be careful because I love PPE. Also, PPE, though, is very clearly 3 disciplines that are present as disciplines right from the beginning, and which students then get that specialized knowledge right from the beginning. So that's another, for people who are trying to decide, that I think is another important difference between them.
Great, thank you. So now we'll move on just to discuss admissions a little bit. So there are a few things. Obviously, you have the application form online. For those who haven't had their education in English, we would need proof of English proficiency. There's more information about this on our website. For the high school credentials, we want to see your academic potential. What did you study and how well did you do in those subjects? Standardized tests aren't actually a requirement, things like SATs, ACTs, and so on. But if you took any, and especially if you're very proud of your results, we would love for you to share those with us. For your CV, we'd like to see your education history and any meaningful extracurricular activities. So this means things like sports, music, art, volunteering, activism. Please show us how you spend your free time when you're not at school and what your interests are as a person. For all 3 programs, we require an essay. There are concrete topics that you can find on the website. These should show then what topics interest you, what you think of the topic, and how you can express yourself in writing. Dorit, do you have anything that you'd like to add in particular about the application essay?
Sure. The application essay is very important. It's all very important. So I don't want to highlight any one specific requirement here above others. But I think what's really important in the application essay is that it is a vehicle through which you as an applicant can really give us a sense of what makes you unique, what drives your passions, what are the questions, the burning questions that that maybe keep you awake at night, the questions that you love to debate at the dinner table. The essay, I think, the ones that we found to be particularly successful were the ones that were driven by that level of engagement, a real engagement with answering a specific question or treating a particular topic. So they're not long. They're not supposed to be very long. But you have to imagine that also we read a lot of application essays, and if you want to stand out, then you should give us a sense as to who you are as a person and what your passions are, and how you think uniquely and deeply about a specific topic.
Great, thank you. And then in addition to this, you also have the motivation letter. So this should be showing what attracted you to CEU, and also what attracts you to the particular program that you're applying for, and how do you see yourself becoming part of this program. And then you have the recommendation. So the recommender should be somebody who knows you well. So, you should explain why you're applying to a certain program to your recommender so they know, so they can actually put some thoughts and examples of why they think that you would be good for this program. So choose somebody who you know quite well from school. And then finally, you have the interview. So this is only by invitation. So for the best candidates, it'll help them stick out amongst from the other ones. Fikar and Rahel, do you have anything that you would like to share from your application process? Is there anything that you think that the prospective applicants should know? Was it relatively straightforward and easy?
For me, yeah, it was relatively straightforward. The website that it was all hosted on was very clear with what information we were supposed to give. I think my interview was very it was very fair. It was very engaging. I had no issue with it whatsoever.
Great.
Yeah, actually, I was really surprised of the interview because it wasn't really like you were not questioned too much. Of course, like I was asked why I chose CEU and this and that, but you also had the opportunity to like say what you expect and what you would like to see in CEU. So it was kind of mutual. It was not a monologue of me answering questions. It was really a dialogue. So that was nice.
Great, thank you. So just a reminder for everybody, the application deadlines for next year, we have the priority deadline. The first one is on the 1st of February, and then the second one is, the last deadline is 12th of April. Okay, a couple other questions that I would love to ask Fikar and Rahel, because I think it's always most interesting hearing things from the student's perspective. Any insights that you could share with prospective students who are considering this program? And what do you know now? So 2 months, are we 2 months into your first year? Yeah, that you didn't know before you enrolled. So what have you learned now while you're here that you want prospective students to know about? And how has your experience been? Who wants to go first?
Should I go first?
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the first question?
The first question is, any insights you could share with prospective students who are considering the program?
Okay. I think, okay, I went to a school, I went to a very small school with an international program. I took the IB. And I think that for me personally, CEU is almost the perfect continuation of that. I work very well in small class environments where, as mentioned before, the teachers know me, I know everybody in class, and it's just be prepared to be emotionally engaged with the material and your professors and your classmates, because these are people, like, you're all going to know each other for the next 4 years. You're all going to get reasonably close. And like I've, like 2 weeks in, and I already knew every single face that I could expect to see when in class. This is not, how do I say this? I know people who go to much bigger universities. I know people who go to UBC and U of T and universities across the UK. And I understand, as I understand it, they do have that feeling that they're just a droplet in the ocean, that they're just one student over hundreds of other people. And, being in such a small class, there are certain expectations from you, like, like your professors are going to notice if you're, they can pay more attention to you. So they're going to notice if you're plagiarizing or if your grades are slipping or if you're messing up. But at the same time, they're much more effectively able to help you with that. We don't even have, like, I was unfamiliar with what the concept of a tutorial class is, because CEU just doesn't have that, because there are the student to teacher ratio is so, it's such an integral part of how it operates, that it's not, I wouldn't say it's exactly for everybody, but if you're looking for an education that means that the professors can engage with you much more personally than they would at a bigger university or other universities abroad, CEU is the one for you.
Great, thank you. And Rahel, do you have something to add to that? So insights to share with prospective students who are considering this program.
Yeah, like another thing which I didn't know when I applied to, when I got into CEU, but we don't have an exam period like normal universities that all my friends go to have a period of 1 or 2 months, and in this period, they have all their exams and they just basically stay at home and study. And we don't have that. We build our grades during the whole semester or during the whole term with assessments like homeworks, presentations, midterm exams that you can like take home and answer the questions. And I think that's really cool because it's also a difference in learning. Like you don't have to learn, you know, facts and numbers and names, but you just have to understand concepts, and they just want to, the teachers just want to see that you understand what you're talking about in class and that you can think about that and you conceptualize. And I like that more because I feel like in the 21st century, we can check up everything in the internet. We just have to have the skills to know what's right and wrong. And that's something that we learn in CU. And then we have to have the skills to also understand. And so I think that's a big thing too. And another thing that like, because I'm European, and I just like, when I got into CU, I realized that my education, which was a very good education, but it was still very European focused, like world history, you know, Christopher Columbus found America. And I realized a lot of times when I had to do a reading or when we were talking about a topic in class, that because CU is also American, this shift is kind of, it's like different. We don't have this European mindset focus, but we can also go out of it and have a like world citizen look on the situations in the world. And that's really cool.
Great, thank you. Dorit, can you tell us a little bit of what kind of high school students you had in mind when you designed this program then?
Well, I think Rahel and Fikar. I think what we had in mind, okay, let me back up a little bit. I mean, the CEU up until this year was exclusively an MA and PhD delivering university. We were strictly a graduate, or as in the UK, they would say postgraduate university. So what we envisioned for our undergraduate programs was really inflected by our experience at the graduate level, which is already programs that are highly international and very high achieving students from all over the world, but who are reaching outwards, who have a sense of, you know, that maybe didn't necessarily have the chance to travel the world, because of course most people don't, but have a sense that there's a world outside of their city or national boundaries or village. And so, and those are exactly the qualities that we were looking for when we were recruiting our very first cohort, and which I think we did it really successfully. I think it's been a wonderful, really exciting development for the whole university. And I should add, there's a lot of excitement still about the BAs and the presence of undergraduate programs. It's just unfortunate that the pandemic has kind of prevented some people from coming in person because of visa reasons. And now also we have to move online teaching again. But to go back to the question, so we are looking for students who are ready to be intellectually challenged. Our goal is not to try to fail everybody and to show how incredibly smart we professors are. And therefore, I mean, by challenging, I don't mean that we're setting out we're not setting up people to fail, but we do want it to be an environment where students enjoy the challenge, the intellectual challenges, precisely because it's a small group setting. It's very hard to hide in the back row. And furthermore, we're very serious about participation and presence. So this is not a program where you can just show up for the final exams during the exam period and still pass a course. It doesn't work like that. It's because participation is crucial, ongoing presentations, assignments, and so on. So really engage students, and students who are civically engaged, culturally engaged, and I think also who strive for excellence, not necessarily academic excellence all the time, but have a rounded sense of excellence, that it's also about engagement, it's about community, about caring for others, caring for the communities that surround us. So these are all, so I think that's quite a lot. We have pretty high standards because it's really not just about the GPA or standardized tests. It's about a whole suite of characteristics that we look for. And in fact, sometimes even if a student is, looks to be absolutely outstanding on paper, but then in the interview strikes us as extremely narrow, then that person might not have as strong of a chance of being accepted into the program as somebody who has the opposite profile, who maybe was not the absolute top of their class, but is otherwise an extremely interesting, engaged person. We would much rather have the second type than the first type, but we also want academically strong students.
So how important are extracurricular activities then? That is definitely, you're not just looking at academics, you're looking at other things as well.
I mean, they're important, but the only thing, there's no question that it's important. The only hesitation that I have to say it as just like a point blank generalization is that we're also very aware, and we're very experienced because of the graduate education that we deliver, that students have different profiles coming from different countries. I mean, many US students already are writing CVs from the age of 16. Or even younger, and know that the CV needs to look a certain way. And so it needs to have internships and, I don't know, model UN. And, a student applying from Eritrea might not have that. And so I don't want to give the impression that we're all looking for the exact same characteristics, because we're sensitive to the fact that people coming out of different country systems have different expectations. They're groomed. I mean, students are also groomed to look a certain way for university applications. So we're certainly looking for people who are engaged, but it could be that for some people, what does it mean to be engaged? It could be that it means that they're constantly arguing with their grandparents. I mean, I keep on using the dinner table example, but we can go back to that, and that this is something that, has really prompted them to think a lot about the world. There's certainly that. And there are people who already have lots of internships and model UNs, and that's another form of engagement. So we don't have only one definite, I mean, we're not, we're an American accredited university, but we're really an international university. We know very well that there are different school systems and different cultural norms, and we try to take that into account sensitively when we look at applicants.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we're open to any questions. Have there been any questions in the chat box? Lydia, no.
Wait, can I actually already then follow up? Because there's one more thing I want to say, which is as a continuation of the point I just made. It's the reason also, what I just said about the international profile of our students is the reason that we don't post, for example, a minimum GPA. There's no single, and it's because, a GPA, a certain GPA from Georgia is not going to be the same as a GPA of a student who completed the Matura in Austria. So, and the same goes for standardized tests. That's why we don't insist on, we don't insist that, even though we're an American accredited university, we don't expect that students will have done the SATs or the ACT. If you have done them and they're very good scores, please do submit it, because it certainly adds to your application, but it's not a requirement.
Great, thank you. Anything else you would like to add about the application process in general that they should know?
No, I mean, I think I wanted to emphasize the aspect of GPAs. Well, also that we do have our admissions, we have admissions staff who are trained to be able to make these distinctions between applicants from different countries, looking at their transcripts and making sense of what a transcript looks like in one part of the world and what a transcript looks like from a completely different part of the world. So we do, we have the infrastructure for it because we've always been an international university. I think, I mean, there was one more point that I wanted to make that is not about the applicants, but it's a bit more about understanding CEU. And then maybe, you know, which can shape people's decision potentially to come or not to apply. Depends on your preferences. But we are a research university. And so what it means is that the teachers, the professors who are teaching in the classroom are also high-level researchers in their respective fields. So one really gets a chance to be taught by specialists. And I think that's another aspect which is important to understand about CEU. There are American style or even American accredited universities in Europe that are actually not where the teaching is not delivered primarily by scholars, by high-level experts. And I do think one of the unique aspects at CEU is that you have the combination of the small classroom size and a lot of attention to teaching and to the students at the same time as you're being taught by people who are, you know, excellent philosophers, political scientists, economists, and so on. So that's more about, again, trying to understand the nature of this institution rather than strategies towards application or understanding the application process.
Great, thank you. So still no questions in the chat box. Does anybody want to actually ask a question who in person, as much as one can in person, online?
I have a question. Well, it's not really a question. I just was wondering if I could get some more details on like the opportunity to study abroad and dorming. Okay.
Dorit, do you want to speak a little bit more about study abroad?
Sure.
And the dorms? Sure.
I am less informed about the dorms, but I'll start at least with the study abroad, and then I'll say what I can about the dorms. So for CPS, there is an option of a term or a full year abroad in the third year. We have a series of agreements that are already in place, but that we're also developing more because we're a member of several networks. So let me see if I get them right and cover them all. We're a member of a European consortium called Civica, which includes, it's an EU-funded consortium. And it includes, it's a consortium of the top social science universities in Europe. So it includes, for example, LSE. LSE is still part of it, Brexit notwithstanding. Sciences Po in Paris, Bocconi in Italy, which is actually a top economics program there. The Stockholm School of Economics, and I'm sure I'm missing something. We have an ongoing partnership with the BARD network. The BARD colleges have colleges. Well, there's the main BARD college in the Hudson Valley north of New York City, but there are a network of BARD colleges throughout the world. We have a long-standing relationship with them, and that has been further crystallized through a new network called OSUN, which is the Open Society University Network. And that incorporates also several other universities of a quite different varieties, such as the American University of Central Asia, BRAC, which is in Bangladesh. I mean, there are actually a whole bunch. There are more increasingly. For example, one, I didn't realize that now in the network, there's a new member, Colombian University, the Universidad de los Andes, and so on. So it's an expanding network. And then another network that we're part of is called CIPUS, which is a network of Central European universities and Southeast European universities. So if one wants to stay more regional, that's another option. And the nice advantage of that one is there's even a little bit of, it's a little bit of I think it's a monthly stipend that one gets by virtue of the university being a member of it. And I believe that for all of them, I mean, I want to be careful in saying this, but generally the principle is that the tuition is the CEU tuition. So even if you were to go elsewhere to a university that its home tuition is higher than ours, in most cases, the agreement is such that you would still be paying the home tuition. But we're working on more. We're working on more, but actually already from those institutions, from those networks, it already gives quite a few options. Now, with regards to the, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was just going to say with regards to the dorms, the next question.
Right. Okay, so the dorms, I'm sorry, but I'm a little less aware of the developments on that front. I mean, generally the situation is that because we have recently moved to Vienna, we don't yet have our own exclusive dorms. We had them in Budapest. We still have them. We still have CEU dorms, but we don't have a building that's called CEU dorms in Vienna. So we've contracted with the OEAD, which is an organization within Austria that manages, it's a kind of, as far as I understand, sort of public-private partnership that manages, I think, probably the majority of student dorms in Austria. The BA students are all housed in the same dorm. And the policy is that in the first year, we ask that all students be in the dorms. A few people ask for exemptions. If they have good reason, we accept it. And then beyond that, it's up to students whether they stay on or find their own housing elsewhere. But the options specifically for the next academic year, I apologize, but I don't know the information.
No, it's okay, I understand.
Yeah, but I'm sure it'll be updated once we know more, that it would be updated on our website.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great. Are there any other questions?
We're in the process. I mean, I'm on the topic of dorm. We are in the process of eventually constructing our dorms, but I think for anybody who's part of this webinar, it probably would not affect you, because that's a 5-year project, because there's a complete new campus development that'll take at least 5 years till it's complete. And that will include dorms, but we're not there yet. So until then, we're gonna have this OEAD contractual relationship.
I now have a new question. Yeah, I know that the BA programs are relatively new. I was just wondering if it's common, I guess, if someone applies for a certain BA and then switches to another one, maybe later on in the course, like if it doesn't fit them or something.
Yeah, I mean, we anticipate that would happen, and we have a policy that students may apply for that, and so in theory, yes, it's possible. But it requires an application. It still requires an agreement from the program head, and it's doable. It's not easy because the curricula, particularly in the beginning, are so different, but it's possible. Yes. I mean, especially since anyway, I mean, just to be clear, we also accept transfer students. I mean, under very specific circumstances, but it's basically the same principle that you're effectively transferring from one program to another.
Okay, thank you.
Can I speak about this really quickly? Actually?
Yeah, please. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I actually know of a classmate who is actually very heavily considering moving from PPE to CPS. So it's absolutely a thing that that students consider, and can happen.
Yeah, and we had the earliest that we've had is an initial inquiry of somebody who was interested in the opposite direction, and we said let's talk, but it hasn't gone further than that because we're waiting for that person to let us know whether they really want to do it. But yeah, I mean, it happens, and it's, of course, we're not surprised because we completely understand that sometimes one realizes that one likes things that you didn't realize you liked, and the opposite, that you really don't like a topic that you, or a discipline that you thought you were really gonna like. I also, to be frank, completely understand that sometimes there are parental pressures. So one is sort of nudged in a specific direction that is not necessarily in the direction that a student would have decided for their own. So sure, I mean, we understand that these things can change and can come to an arrangement. It just requires some really careful thinking based on the specific coursework that a student has done and the point at which they asked to transfer.
Okay, great, thanks.
Great. Any other questions then? If not, further questions can always be found on our, be emailed to undergraduate.ceu.edu, and you can also go on our website for more information. And I think anyways, our hour is more than up. So I'd like to very much thank Dorit and Fikar and Rahel for helping us with this discussion. I think it's been very informative and good, and good luck to everybody who's applying. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Tanya.
Bye.
Thanks, Fikar and Rahel. Bye.